Good morning. I've had lots of requests for recipes for my bread, which is known in this house as Popsie's bread. Enjoy. So first of all, let me start by giving credit to Paul Hollywood. He's been my guru on this voyage. So I bought this book fairly early on, and it is very much the foundation on which I built up my knowledge. So I recommend this Paul Hollywood book, How to Bake, strongly to you. So first of all, let's talk about the ingredients. So I have this strong white flour, and all the flour I get is made in Wessex Mill, which is in Wantage. Closely followed by wholemeal bread flour, also Wessex Mill. And then starts the variables. I often use this cobber flour because it has quite a lot of whole wheat grains in it, and it gives a bit more roughage, I suppose is the right word. I also use a 6-seed. Last but by no means least, I use Allison's yeast. Now I started off using the real yeast, which you can get in Sainsbury's, their baker's counter, but you have to start it off in water. So once I discovered this, which is intended to be used just in its powdered form, but I start off this in the same way as I use the proper yeast to start off, and it seems to work extraordinarily well. So we'll see all that in a moment. In addition, I use combinations of these. This is chia seeds. This is mill flax seeds, or linseeds as we tend to know it. And then this is a mixture of sunflower and pumpkin seed mix. And there are other seed mixes available as well, and I will add those as the mood takes me. I also add chopped Brazil nuts sometimes. I also add hazelnuts chopped sometimes, and I even add walnuts chopped sometimes. So now let me talk about the hardware. I bought this Kenwood Chef about 5 years ago now, and it is absolutely fantastic and essential to my baking. Also essential is an accurate weighing scales, the spatula which comes with the Kenwood Chef, and this bread scraping tool which I bought off the internet. Now, I keep a record of every bake I do, and this is simply because I've found that unlike cooking, bread will snap your face off, so to speak, if you try to take a shortcut. So I learned this lesson early on, and since then I write down to the gram everything I put into my bread, and this is just a sample of. So I always start off with getting the yeast underway, and here we go. We're going to put in about 14 grams, and I make the full capacity of the Kenwood Chef, which is why all these measurements are done round it. So here we go, about 14 grams of yeast. There we have 14 grams. And then we just stir it and get it underway. So once I've stirred it with a spoon, we just put it to the side. So I put the bowl for the Kenwood Chef on the weighing scales and zero the scale. So we start off with the Wessex Mill, the flour, and I guess we will do, shall we say, 150 grams of this today. 250 of the wholemeal. So I should have 400. So there we are, 400 grams total so far. I'm going to add cobber. I'm going to add 350 of this. So 750 grams we've got. And finally I'm going to add some 6-seed, and we're going to add more seeds later on, so this will be the least of the lot. So we'll add 200, so that makes it 950. 950 grams total. Now next we're going to add some salt. And I tend to do the same amount of salt as I do yeast. So in this case it'll be 14 grams of salt. Now I discovered that adding olive oil seems to give the bread a texture that keeps it fresh, feeling fresher for about an extra day or so. So with this amount I add 50 milliliters of olive oil. The three additives I've decided to put in today's bread are the milled flaxseed, chia seeds, and a sunflower and pumpkin seed mix. So it's anybody's guess. I'll probably do, let's say, about 30 of the flaxseed. Let's do 20 of the chia and 30 of the mixed seed. So now I'm adding 30 of the flaxseed. That's 30 grams, of course. There's 30. And now I'm going to add chia seeds. So let's say, I think we decided we're going to do 20, but you can vary these as your taste wishes. So it's actually a total of 50. And we're now going to add the sunflower and pumpkin seed mix. And I think I'm going to up the amount here. We're going to make another 50, so that'll be a total of 100. 101 in today's case. Now this is what the mixture looks like before we start blending it. So now we're about to start blending or mixing the flour mill, and the most important ingredient is all now ready to go in. This is the yeast that's been sitting there working itself into a frenzy for about the last 10 minutes or so while we've been getting everything else ready. So we just take out the spoon and we'll just tip it in. So now we're just ready to start. We're going to close the top of the chef down and turn it on. And we do it slowly at first. I use just a mini one to start with. So as the mix develops, now we're going to add the water. At this stage, we might need to move the bits from the edge into the middle. And now, what I've got here is water up to 400, because I think we've already added 100. It's very wet there at the moment, and we'll just use the spatula. Crank up the speed a little bit now. Now it's going to be very dry, and we're definitely going to need more water. Now what you don't want it is to be too wet and sloppy, and equally you don't want it too dry. It's a bit of judgment and keep practicing, but err on the side of caution. So we're going to add a little bit more water now, very carefully. Small little drop. Let's see how we get on with that. I think that would be plenty. So we put the jug away and see how we get on. Now at this stage, it's going to take about 8 minutes or so. Somewhere between 7 and 9 minutes before we get it right. And what we'll be looking for is the strings to form, and that's apparently the gluten. And in the end, the bottom of the bowl will be free of dough. About 2 minutes later, we're just looking for we'll slow down this gluten strings to form, and it's a judgment thing. You get used to it. You can just start to see them just here, that kind of stringy effect. At the end, we will know it's finished when it seals up the bottom of the bowl. That's probably about 3 or 4 minutes ahead of us. This is more exciting than watching television. The string is starting to form, and I'm keeping an eye for it to right its own bottom, so to speak. It's getting there very slowly. And now the bottom is nearly clean, so now we're well on the way. A little bit more speed, up to about 2.5. And now we're going to stop it and let it rest for at least an hour or what Paul says, until it's doubled in size. Now we open up the chef, and then I'm going to use a spatula to get all that dough off it. And this is this gluten stringy effect that we're looking for. And here's the dough ready to prove. So what I'm going to do next is put some cling wrap on it with a drop of olive oil to stop the cling wrap sticking to the dough as it rises. And we can leave it until it doubles in size. That will take at least an hour, but there's no harm if it stays on for 2 or even 3 hours. But that's the next procedure. Tiny bit like that. Spread it around like that on the dough like this. So then we leave it, in this case our kitchen is normally about 22, 23 degrees, and let it rise. I just cover it over there to keep it cozy. So here's a list of the ingredients for today's bread. So the bread has risen now. I've actually left it just over an hour. And here it is, got to the top, and in fact it started to go back again. So then we knock it down, just hit it like that. It collapses away, and then we're going to knead it. And I've oiled the board, and we just flatten it down, turn it over like that. We flatten it over like that. Called knocking it back. So today we're going to make a collection of small tin loaves. These are half-pound loaves. They're quite tiny. One pound loaf, and whatever is left we'll make into baps. 110 grams, between 200 and 210. Let's say 210 each. No, that's. 205. 204. So we just squeeze all the air out of them and just put them over. And then put it in the tin. Easy as that. Final one. So now, having put the dough into the 4 tins, we leave it to prove for about an hour. And I do this by putting a big clean plastic bag over the top of it and put it off to one side, and that just keeps the air. Otherwise it seems to form, if you don't do this, it forms a hard crust, and that's not good at this stage. So that's the 4 small tins. Now we're going to do the 1 big tin. Get the scales ready again. Let's do 400 then. Uses a tiny bit more for the 353. 399, that will do. So again, as before, squeak, squeak, squeak. Roll it into a bit of a sausage. This one is a tin, and it goes. And again, just put a clean plastic bag over it to prove. Finally, we've got the baps. So for the baps, we have 507 grams. That's easy. It's 101 and a bit grams each. So far, I've done 2. That's paper on the tin. And again, this bap, the way they are here, They're on the baking tray. And that's it. So we've got an hour. We will put the oven on. The oven goes on to 220. For the rolls, they need about 20 minutes. For the bread, the big bread in particular, it needs a half an hour to 35 minutes. Really, if you leave it 5 or 10 minutes longer, it just adds to the crust. It doesn't seem to burn, but more of that in a moment. So here we are. The bread is ready to come out. And so this is what the bread looks like. And we're about to put it onto this tray here to let it cool down and ventilate. So this is what the work was all about. These little loaves are just beautiful. And the baps are quite big, but more than enough for one person for breakfast or a big sandwich. Fab, and very hot at the moment, and fabulous smell. So Tracy, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video and that you'll have lots of fun in the future making Popsie's bread. It's a fabulous hobby. All the best.